We had a very full day yesterday. I hope you enjoyed it. Lots of content, lots of engagement, lots of activity, and more to go. So we're very excited. Thank you for being with us. Hope you had a good evening last night. We'll hear stories about St. Patrick's Day celebrations, I'm sure, as the day goes on. But I want to launch right into today's rather full agenda. We think another meaningful time that we can have together. Quite excited about the gathering of people that we have and the big ideas that are being shared as we do this. We have, as you will see on the screen for a moment, a quite active social media program that's running alongside of this. The blogs, the tweets, the other bits of activity, the online participants. So we're not just talking to the 400 or so in this room and the 1,000 or so that will pass through downstairs today, but a number of other people who are deeply interested and engaged in this conversation with us. So exciting stuff indeed. But let's get on to the main event. It is my pleasure and privilege to invite to the stage the new chairman of business in the community, the managing director of Waitrose, a great friend of this movement, Mark Price. Mark.
Good morning, everyone, and as chairman of business in the community, may I welcome you to the second day of Business in the Community's Responsible Business Convention. It really is a huge pleasure to see so many of you here, and I think it's testament to the seriousness with which business is addressing some of the real challenges that we're facing as a country today, and indeed the wider world. It's also proof of the belief of our President, the Prince of Wales, has in the ability of business to be a force for good. For more than a quarter of a century, he has done more than anyone else to cajole, encourage, and support us into recognising our responsibility towards the communities in which we operate. With the severe economic and environmental challenges facing us, the needs are as great, if not greater, than they have ever been, be they in our urban or rural communities or in our natural and built environment. Now, I know that each and every one of you knows this, otherwise you wouldn't have made the effort to be here. But it is my hope that today, Business in the Community will equip you with information and assistance to maximise the positive impact that we can all make. But of course, this is not a one-way street. As many of the companies who've done some of the most inspirational work will tell you, and I'm thinking here of Barclays' remarkable homelessness project and the stunning work of UBS in Hackney's most deprived schools. The effect on a company's employees can be hugely rewarding. I know this from Waitrose and our Community Matters scheme. Each month we give £1,000 to each branch to share out between 3 local good causes nominated by customers and voted on by our partners. Since it started in 2008, we've donated £6 million and more than 20,000 local charities and good causes have been rewarded. And employee engagement is built to an even greater degree when there is an organised volunteering programme, such as the CARES programme run by BITC. At the moment, there are 350 partner companies addressing social issues in communities across the United Kingdom by volunteering their employee skills and time during business hours. And that's the key point. It has to be a gift of time from the business. This approach builds real loyalty and pride in a company, and after all, what's more important than the people that work in our businesses? And it matters to our reputation too, and it makes a difference to how our investors perceive us, how our customers view us, and how successful we are in recruiting the best talent for whom it is increasingly important. We've moved a long way from the time when the corporate sector believed the very nature of what it did, driving the economy, providing employment, shareholder value, earning profit and paying taxes, is delivering a public good, that it had to do no more than that. In fact, the founder of the John Lewis Partnership saw things differently, and he wrote into our first constitution in 1928 that the happiness of our partners was the supreme purpose of the partnership. And at Waitrose, we're endeavouring to achieve that by pursuing 3 principles. The first is a financially sustainable business that looks to the long term, creates the conditions that allow us to recruit more people and to reward them properly. The second is a commitment to give our people the opportunity to develop their skills and interests both in work and outside, and encourage them to help make the business stronger and better. And finally, we have a determination to do the right thing, so that our partners can be proud of our business, which ultimately gives them a true sense of well-being. But everyone in business knows that our role has changed. We know that investing in our communities is not just in money, but in time and expertise. And that makes for good business. As Marcus Seif, the founder of Marks & Spencer, said, a prosperous high street demands a prosperous back street. So today's business in the community has as its objectives transforming business, transforming communities, because the two are so closely linked. We've been charged by both our President and by the Prime Minister to see how we can work with the most hard-pressed communities in the country. We have a strong track record on which to build, and many of the companies in this room have been involved in some truly inspirational work, with school children and with teachers in some of the most deprived inner city areas, in rural communities, from saving village pubs to securing the future of our hard-pressed hill farmers, with the support for community entrepreneurs from Balsall Heath to Bristol. The list really is endless. And over the last 4 years, business in the community, under the inimitable leadership of Dame Julia Clevenden, has led a consortium of the Prince's charities to help revitalise Burnley. The Burnley project is making a huge difference thanks to the unique cooperation and action by business, charities and local government. It is a model that we can and must build on. Central to our success will be the business connectors, individuals who link together businesses with local organisations and community leaders so that you can bring practical help and solutions to the areas in most need. During the coming year, we shall see increasing numbers of business connectors appointed, not least, I hope, because many companies, and dare I say it, that means you, will second somebody to the task. We've already had offers from many companies, and some, I have to say, incredibly generous offers, and we hope that more will follow suit, because all of our experience tells us that working in partnership like this delivers the best and the quickest results. At the same time, we must not weaken our efforts towards the world, and we must tread more lightly, as we only have one planet. And the shocking events in Japan really bring that home, and we're delighted that Hitachi, one of our speakers, and Stephen Gomerstall is here. And Stephen, we really do recognise what a fantastic commitment it is from you to be here today, and we know that many of your workforce have been impacted. So thank you very much for coming, and our thoughts are with you and your company. It's also very clear from every measure that you look at that we're going to face increasingly severe environmental challenges. And it isn't just about carbon. From a massive loss of the world's biodiversity to a dangerous lack of water in increasing parts of the world, from the destruction of the rainforest to the potential collapse of global fish stocks. We're putting the planet under increasing stress. Each of us has a responsibility to reduce it, and business in the community is here to help, both through the Mayday Network, which I'm sure you've all heard of, and the START campaign. One business facing, the other consumer facing. If you are not already involved in these two campaigns, I urge you to get involved. Waitrose has been closely involved with START, which Ian Cheshire, I have to say, has done a brilliant job in leading, and I can attest to the difference it's made to partners in our business and to our customers. The point is that the issues we face are all connected, and if we approach our social, economic and environmental challenges in the right way, by looking at them in the round and seeing the links between them, Then we'll be able to chart a course that could lead us to a far more stable and better future. And that future is one that is good for all our businesses and, of course, the future generations for whom we have ultimate responsibility. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't think there are many other business leaders in the country who have proved they understand this better than today's keynote speaker, Ian Cheshire, the Chief Executive of Kingfisher. Ian is also chairman of Business in the Community's 2050 Vision Project, trying to look forward so that businesses can prepare for a future where resources are increasingly constrained and demand ever higher. Ian truly understands the issues, and he has been prepared to lead from the front, being courageous in both word and actions. With around 25% of the UK's carbon emissions coming from households and running one of the world's leading home improvement retailers, Ian has recognised that Kingfisher is in a unique position to help consumers make their homes more sustainable and at a lower cost. He has shown that it's possible and rewarding to work in partnership with the public, private and NGO sectors, and there could be no better way than to kickstart today's programme than to welcome Ian Cheshire to the stage. Ian.
Embarrassing. Thank you. That was pretty deeply embarrassing, but thanks for that anyway, Mark. I'd like to share with you today briefly the project that BITC has been working on, for which, frankly, I really can't take any credit. The working group have done all the work, but I'm very pleased to be able to introduce it. I'm very proud to be able to sponsor it and share some of the thoughts with you. It's on the sort of title says A Vision for a Sustainable Future. I'm just going to take a few minutes to really explain probably three things, which is why do we actually need a vision for a sustainable future? You know, why bother doing this at all? Secondly, something about the sort of what that might look like in terms of a process, because you can talk about a vision for a sustainable future and it can remain quite fluffy and sort of out there and not really relevant, particularly to business, and this is business in the community we're talking about. So how can you actually engage? What's the process for doing it? And then finally, just talk a little bit about, well, what's the next step? So what do you actually start doing out of today? And I think the opportunity for us as a group of business leaders to make a difference in this space is enormous. But we do actually have to do something about it. And I think one of the issues occasionally in the sustainability debate, some of the things I've been involved with, is everyone's really comfortable with the words, and actually doing something is much, much, much harder. And what I would encourage you all to do is to figure out how you can actually do something practical, pragmatic that will change your business, as opposed to just have, frankly, a little bit of greenwash, a little bit of sort of, yeah, I've thought about this, and then you can say, all right, I've ticked that box, I don't actually have to do anything. So the challenge to the room today is, can you start doing something? Now, if we talk about the sort of three topics, first off, why do we actually need a vision for a sustainable future? And the project has been very much focused around the idea of what would life in 2050 look like. And the reason for talking about 2050 is it's far enough away so you can imagine a different world. If you go back even 10 years ago you could not buy an airline ticket online. The world does change more than we maybe realize year by year. And if you think about 2050, you can imagine a transformational level of change. You know, this world will be in some elements the same. You know, we'll still have some of our older buildings, some of our older institutions, but many things in the world will have changed radically by 2050. And if you can think transformationally, you can start to get away from some of the day-to-day constraints that we all have. You know, I look after a business that employs 80,000 people around the world. It's B&Q in the UK, but it's Castorama in France, B&Q in China, Koçtaş in Turkey. And what I really notice about my business is there's a massive amount of activity. You know, we are very, very, very busy. You know, we've got 6 million customers a week. However, if you think about a business in a transformational way, you have to think longer term and you have to think more radically, and you can actually make big shifts in a business as long as you get out of the obsession of the day-to-day every now and then. We all have to do the day-to-day, but the thinking transformationally and think about your business, how could it be different? Now, the reason I was sort of talking about transformational shift is that we are on 2050 looking at very, very big changes. You look at the resource impact, you look at population, you look at the cost of materials. It is a one-way bet. We're already at $113 a barrel of oil. We can actually look at most of our resources and say, if we carry on consuming at a 3-planet rate, 1 planet pressures will build up. And it's very easy in the sort of 24-hour cycle of a business to think, yeah, that's something we have to worry about later. Actually, I think as leaders, you need to worry about it now. Because if you don't think about it now, a business model that you take for granted will be destroyed. And a business model that may be a huge opportunity won't be found. And the difficulty for us as business leaders is you're trying to sort of imagine a complete paradigm shift, which I think is where we're going in the future. So we talked about this in the project. What's it like to try and imagine a future, very different sort of sustainable model? And it's as hard for someone who was sitting in an agrarian society to imagine an industrial society. I mean, how the hell does that work? Everything's about the land. And someone comes along and talks to you about this thing called a factory and different modes, totally different resource inputs, totally different business models. Equally, if you're in a very industrial, a Victorian mill, can you imagine trying to describe how a business like Google makes its money? It would have been gobbledygook to people in that era. So you're talking about a complete paradigm shift. And the other problem for us is we've got a particular model of capitalism at the moment which has developed, is very successful, and we have to find the next version. But when you're in this version of it, it's incredibly difficult. It's hard work to imagine what the next version would look like. And the analogy I've used a lot is to say, if you went down in the late 18th century to the slave owners in Bristol and said, good news, we're going to abolish slavery, don't worry, the economy will be all right. And they'll look at you and go, you must be nuts. Because it is the sheer establishment of a current model that makes it harder to imagine what the next model looks like. I'm actually incredibly optimistic about the capability of our human talent and ingenuity to imagine what a next future will look like. But it will be different, and it will require a very, very major shift to move away from a currently very high intensity, high resource use version of capitalism. But I think what we need to do is paint this positive picture, because one of the issues with the sustainability agenda more broadly is that it can quite quickly get into a sort of scare mode of it's all disaster, we're all going to end up in a cave, knitting our sort of loincloths or something. It's a very, very bad sort of do less, use less. And while there is no doubt, sort of being more efficient, using less resource, tick, I think we've actually got to go further than that. We've got to paint a picture of why the future for business and the future for the capitalist system, because it is the solution we're going to have to work our way through, has got to be something positive we can take people to and explain to people why that's a good idea. And what we've tried to do with the process, and there's been a major series of inputs from a very broad bunch of organizations, is to sort of start imagining and painting a picture of what that might look like. So if I can just briefly describe the process we've been through, is as opposed to trying to move maybe step by step and say, right, 5% better here, 10% better there, was actually go through a session of visioning a future. So you have to actually jump into the future and say, right, what would my business look like? How would it be different in a completely different model? And I think the really key thing that we've been working on, which I think has got a lot more, at the start of it, there's a lot more to come, is to figure out how would your business model shift in a different world. In a world where, let's say, oil is $250 a barrel, where you can't just throw stuff away. There are various different issues. How could you maybe deal with a consumer base that behaves very, very differently? And when you start to think about the business model, for us, as retailers, we've had a very traditional business model, which is you tend to dig stuff up, turn it into product, put it in a very big shed, advertise it on TV, hope people come to you, and then they use the product and then they chuck it away. And somewhere in there we make some money. Well, quite a lot of money, actually, to be fair. What we have to do for B&Q and Kingfisher point of view is imagine a future where we could say, instead of us selling a power tool, maybe what we do is we actually sell the use of a power tool. There's actually a wonderful statistic that over half the power tools we sell in the UK get used twice a year. So actually what maybe we should do is be a lesser, we should lease these things out, sell the use of it. Or maybe what we should do is design our products in such a way that we build the products in component terms so they're ready to be reused in a closed loop recycling. And actually what we make our money from is owning the recycling loop, and actually the materials in it is what makes us our value added. And it's a very different picture, and it's very hard for people, again, as I said before, to sit in an existing model and go, well, how on earth would you make money out of that? How can we do something different? And my challenge to our business has been, well, we're going to have to change, so let's at least be driving the change, imagining the change, because if we think about the idea first, we can get there quicker, and being very selfish about it, we'll be one of the winners. I think the key idea in here is if you vision a future that's different, if you can think about a business model, so it's not fluffy, it's actual real business, you can actually create a viable future for your enterprise, and all of us want to run sustainable businesses which will be around for many years. But to do that, we'll have to discover this next wave of opportunity. So what we've done is a series of workshops, a series of ways of encouraging people to think about a different scenario, a different world. And it's been really interesting for me from at least a couple of sessions I've seen, how businesses can go, okay, I'm in this business. Now, if you change my future, how would I work? How can I do something different? And it's not a negative. It's about there's opportunity in this. There's ways of doing things differently. There's ways of leading differently, which I think fundamentally will unlock a whole new set of opportunities for the people to get it right. Now, we've got a short video which I just want to show in a minute, which is something that we'll make more broadly available, but it tries to sort of convey the idea that in 2050, we will be dealing with a different world. It doesn't have to be a negative world. It can be a very positive set of opportunities, but we have to take a leadership role in redefining our models to be fundamentally sustainable in a way that maybe we haven't had to address before now. So I'm going to show you this and then wrap up with a final slide. Can we run the video, please?
The world is changing. The way we do business is changing, and customer needs are developing. Supply chains are shifting, and new markets are opening up. A more connected generation is emerging. Knowing what the future holds presents enormous opportunity, especially for business. Thanks to business, we'll live in a more efficient world. Product development and cost models will shift because companies now own components throughout their life cycle. Our world will be increasingly connected, and with a global population of 9 billion, there will be opportunities everywhere. Through open sourcing, the citizens of the world will become your partners, innovating and co-creating your future products and services. People's lifelong health needs will be understood from birth. The businesses that capitalize on new health technologies will reap the benefits. Community pharmacy kiosks could offer remote MRI scans and diagnosis, reducing bottlenecks in doctor surgeries and hospitals. The cost of living as we do today will rise. This will mean a wealth of opportunities in delivering everything we take for granted in low-carbon, local ways. Retailers might move away from selling one-off products to lease-based models, where they offer a lifelong clothing service. The way businesses are evaluated will be based not only on financial performance, but also on environmental impact and contribution to the global community. Let's be clear, we're talking about a prosperous world, one that can sustain itself, that enriches lives and communities, that allows human advancement, and that embraces technology. A world that people really want. Businesses across the world are starting to transform and prepare for this world. Are you one of them? Visioning the future, transforming business. Visit bitc.org.uk.
The point about the video is to say you have to sort of jump forward, and by 2050 I'm not sure I'm going to be technically around to see that, but I think we will see a very, very different set of models and a different set of challenges for business and a different set of real opportunities. But what we have to start doing is, I think, is redefining this business model in each and every area. And it won't happen, I'm afraid, equally. There are going to be winners and losers in this process. I think the exciting thing about what BITC is trying to do is to say, embrace this as a real opportunity, because there is a leadership opportunity here. Now, we've started on this process with a group of companies, and I'd like to thank particularly Emma and the team at BITC, but all the companies that have contributed to it. It's still relatively early days, but what we have got is a toolkit and, if you like, a process that we can share, which is just help you imagine what your business model in whatever area you're involved could be in the future as a result of imagining the world differently. Now, I think, and I'm completely convinced, that the people that get this right early will be enormously rewarded in the future. Not least because we have no choice. You know, there is no choice but sustainability going forward. There is, by definition, no future for an unsustainable business. So for us, the trick is, how exactly are we going to evolve? How are we going to move things forward? And let's do it, you know, proactively, rather than have the constraints forced upon us and gradually find that we're being squeezed, as in whatever business you are, because of these pressures that will undoubtedly build up over the next 10 to 20 years. So what we've got, I think, is an opportunity. What we've also got is a way of starting to think about it. And everyone's solutions will be different, because this is not a one-size-fits-all. There is no simple answer. And going back to what I said about hard work, it's incredibly difficult to imagine the future when you're stuck in a present. And the more you can do to move away into that future model, the stronger your business will be and the bigger the opportunity. So if I could encourage you, basically, to do one of two things. Firstly, if you visit the BITC website on visioning, you'll find a lot more material about this. We'd like to get a lot more businesses involved in starting to think about their future. The other thing, and I know Emma Price-Thomas is here, what we'd like to look for is maybe up to 20 companies who we can work more closely with to really start to transform the idea of a new business model, a new sustainable, positive future, and work out how that would work for their individual businesses. So this will only really make any sense if we see some pragmatic, real business change out of it. And I think we're now at a point where we can actually start to see that to happen with a handful of companies and then move on and out. But if I could finish with maybe one thought, which is, if you're trying to imagine a business 50 years ago, it is very difficult. And you know, again, going back to my example, who could have described Google when you were certainly when I was growing up in school? The idea was inconceivable. We only just had computers. Look at the change that's happened in that time period, and try and fast forward it into what would happen in the next 20 to 50 years. And I think the big difference is that the global economic and resource issues are now becoming absolutely center stage. And you can try and put your head in the sand and say, well, this doesn't really happen to me and I'm just going to get through the next few years. Actually, I really encourage you, everyone in this room is obviously interested in responsible business, otherwise you wouldn't be here. But really drive the business to say, what can you do to lead this process? Because it's the leaders that will succeed. It's the leaders that will make money. And the leadership requirement here is to reimagine your business. And reimagining is not easy, but it's incredibly rewarding for the people that get it right. So to conclude, it's been great fun being involved with this project. There's a lot more to do. Please get involved, because I think here, particularly in Britain, and I travel around the world a lot, I think we've got a real edge in this whole area. I think we can really move our thinking forward. But it really requires everyone in this room and everyone in the businesses that you represent to get behind the opportunity and figure out how we can really create a vision for a sustainable future. Thanks very much.
Ian, thank you for those powerful words. Visioning the future, transforming business. by business, for business. A lot of debate has gone into this, even whether visioning is a real word. Perhaps it's like Googling it is a real word now, and we hold on to it. How do we accelerate the pace of change? This is what we've been talking about the last day or two. How do we create the practical tools that you need in your organization to take what is a very abstract idea and turn it into something very practical and real for your business planning, both for today and for the future? How do we create that framework of conversation and challenge and opportunity? And how do we do that in a way that shares it across businesses in this country and beyond, across sectors and indices, to really come up with something that's powerful, that matters? We think we're onto something very big. We hope many of you will participate in it. We hope that the practical tools, the frameworks, the things that Ian's talked about that you can take back to your own business and work on in your own context will help you on this journey. So big stuff, and thank you, Ian, for that. We now move on to our next phase this morning, which is to talk about perhaps some other big ideas. And it is my pleasure and privilege to invite to the stage Declan Curry, a great friend of business in the community, an active journalist both on radio and TV, BBC and others. Many of you will know him. Many of you will have been grilled by him probably over time. So Declan, over to you.